You are standing in front of a grocery store meat counter. There is chicken, there is beef, there is pork, there is lamb. You have walked past this counter hundreds of times without thinking twice. But here is a question that should have occurred to you a long time ago. Why isn't there hippo? Not because it doesn't taste good, not because there aren't enough of them, and not because no one ever tried. Someone did try, and their plan nearly changed everything you eat. For one brief, strange moment in American history, hippo meat almost became a staple of the national diet. And the reason it didn't is one of the most fascinating stories in the history of human civilization. Because the answer to why we don't eat hippos turns out to be the answer to something much bigger. It explains why your entire food system exists the way it does. It explains why you eat the specific animals you eat, and it reveals that the choice was never really yours. Stay until the end of this video, because the last part doesn't just explain hippos, it explains you. Here is where it starts. A hippo weighs 4,000 pounds. Some males hit 7,000. That is more meat than 30 pigs. Hippos are the third largest land animal on Earth. They are herbivores. They eat grass. For millions of years, they lived in the rivers and lakes of an entire continent. There used to be hundreds of thousands of them. Africa's waterways were packed with them. And for most of human history, they were just right there. Enormous, slow in water, eating plants, and practically nobody farmed them. And here is the part that should bother you. Nobody even asked why. It was just assumed. Of course we don't eat hippos. Obviously. But why obviously? That is the question nobody bothered to answer. Until 1910, when someone tried to do it for real. It is 1910. The United States is facing a meat crisis. The population is exploding. The western grazing ranges are overgrazed and exhausted. Beef prices have shot up to levels working families cannot afford. And in the swamps of Louisiana, there is a second crisis happening at the same time. A plant called water hyacinth has taken over the bayous. It chokes the waterways. It smothers fish populations. It destroys the local fishing economy. And nobody knows how to stop it. A Louisiana congressman named Robert Broussard looks at both crises at once and thinks he sees the solution to both of them simultaneously. His idea is to import hippos, bring them over from Africa, release them into the Louisiana bayous, let them eat the water hyacinth, and then eat the hippos. He calls the resulting product lake cow bacon. He presents this proposal in the United States Congress with complete seriousness. Two of the most famous explorers of the era back the plan publicly. Frederick Russell Burnham, widely considered the greatest scout in the British Empire, stands before Congress and argues that hippos would thrive in American wetlands. The bill passes committee. It is debated seriously in the halls of American government. For a brief window in 1910, the United States came within a few votes of becoming a hippo farming nation. And then the plan dies, and everyone goes back to eating beef. And nobody talks about it for 100 years. But the question that plan leaves behind is enormous. Why couldn't it work? What is it about a hippo that makes the whole thing impossible? The answer starts with the fact that almost nobody knows going in. Hippos are the most dangerous large animal on Earth. Not the most dangerous looking, the most dangerous. Hippos kill more humans every single year than lions, leopards, and crocodiles combined. Researchers estimate that hippos are responsible for roughly 500 human deaths per year in Africa. Possibly many more. The number is hard to count precisely because most attacks happen in remote river communities, far from hospitals and record keeping. And when people hear that statistic for the first time, they almost never believe it, because hippos do not look dangerous. They look round, they look slow, they look like enormous, peaceful river blimps basking in the afternoon sun. That appearance is among the most lethal optical illusions in the natural world. A hippo can run at 30 miles per hour on land. A trained human sprinter tops out at around 28. A hippo has tusks that can reach 20 inches long. Their bite force has been measured at nearly 1,800 pounds of pressure per square inch. They have been documented biting canoes completely in half. They have been filmed biting full-grown crocodiles in half. Not because they eat crocodiles. They don't. Hippos are vegetarians. They attack crocodiles purely out of territorial aggression. And that detail is the key to understanding everything. Hippos are not violent because they are hungry. They are violent because that is simply what they are. Their aggression is not a response to threat. It is their default state. A hippo does not calm down around humans over time. A hippo that grows up near humans does not become comfortable with them. It becomes more dangerous because it stops fearing them while still being a hippo. In 1997, a researcher named Jared Diamond published a book that changed how historians understand civilization. He was trying to answer one of the most fundamental questions in history. Why did some groups of humans end up conquering the world while others stayed isolated? And one of his central answers came down to animals. Specifically, it came down to which animals humans happened to live near, and which of those animals could be tamed. And here is what he found. Out of all the large mammals that have ever existed on Earth, only 14 have ever been successfully domesticated by humans. 14 out of hundreds of species. The cow, the horse, the pig, the sheep, the goat, the donkey, the reindeer, the Bactrian camel, the Arabian camel, the llama, the alpaca, the water buffalo, the yak, and the Asian elephant. That is the entire list. Every steak you have ever eaten comes from that list. Every glass of milk, every leather jacket, every horse ride, all of it traces back to those 14 animals. And when you look at the animals that didn't make the list, you see something strange. The zebra looks almost identical to a horse. Scientists spent over a century trying to domesticate zebras. They could not. The moose, the elk, the rhino, the hippo, all massive, all potentially enormous sources of food and labor, all impossible. Diamond wanted to know why, and the answer he found was a principle he named after one of the most famous opening lines in literature. He called it the Anna Karenina principle. The novel Anna Karenina opens with the line, "Happy families are all alike, but every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way." Diamond applied that logic to domestication. Every successful livestock animal had to be perfect across every single requirement at once. Every failed animal failed because of just one flaw. You only need one flaw to disqualify yourself forever. So what were the requirements? Diamond worked out 6 of them. The first one is diet. A domesticated animal has to eat something cheap and easy to grow. Grass, grain, scraps, not meat. Because feeding a carnivore is wildly inefficient. It takes 10 calories of prey to produce 1 calorie of predator. Hippos eat grass. They pass this test. The second requirement is growth rate. How fast does the animal reach slaughter weight? Cows are ready in 18 months. Chickens in 6 weeks. Hippos take 7 to 10 years to reach full size. That is a farming timescale that makes no economic sense. But let's keep going. The third requirement is captive breeding. Some animals simply refuse to reproduce when they feel confined or watched. Their stress response shuts down reproduction entirely. Hippos have actually been bred in captivity in some zoos. So this one might be possible with the right conditions. The fourth requirement is temperament, not trainability, temperament. The animal has to be naturally calm in its baseline state. The zebra problem illustrates this perfectly. No matter how early in life you begin working with a zebra, they retain a hardwired defensive reflex. Something approaches them from behind, they panic and bite with no warning. You cannot untrain a reflex that lives in the spine, not the brain. Hippos are not merely difficult. They are seismically aggressive. They do not share territory. They do not tolerate intrusion. They erupt without warning at full force. The fifth requirement is the panic response. Herd animals that bolt and stampede easily kill themselves in fences, break their own legs, crush each other. But hippos don't run in herds. They are semi-solitary and territorial. And when a hippo decides to move, it does not stop. It is 4,000 pounds moving at 30 miles per hour. There is no fence in standard agriculture that reliably holds a hippo that wants to leave. The sixth requirement is social hierarchy, the most important one. The most domesticated animals accept humans as the dominant member of their group. Dogs evolved from wolves. Wolves have pack structure. Dogs transferred that instinct onto human families. Horses follow a lead animal. A skilled rider becomes that lead animal. Cows are naturally submissive to assertive individuals. That submissiveness is what makes cattle drives possible. Hippos have their own social structure. Bulls dominate territories and females. But that hierarchy does not extend to include humans. A hippo does not recognize a human as an authority figure. It recognizes a human as either A, neutral irrelevance, or a threat to be destroyed. There is no third category. Hippos fail tests 4, 5, and 6 simultaneously, and you only need to fail one to be off the list forever. Now, imagine you ignored all of that. Imagine it is 1910 and Broussard's plan passed, and the government released hippos into the Louisiana bayous. Let's run the scenario forward. The hippos eat the water hyacinth. That part actually might work. Hippos do eat aquatic vegetation in enormous quantities. But then what? How do you round them up? How do you move them to a processing facility? How do you get anywhere near them safely? Hippo skin is 2 inches thick. Standard farming tranquilizer darts often fail to fully penetrate it. The dart bounces off or delivers a partial dose. And a partially sedated hippo is not a calm hippo. It is a confused and enraged hippo. In the wild, researchers who study hippos in the field operate under strict safety rules that never change. Never put yourself between a hippo and water. Never approach a mother and her calf under any circumstances. Never make a sudden movement within 40 meters. Those rules exist because researchers with years of experience studying hippos have still been killed, not because they were careless. Because hippos are that fast, that unpredictable, and that explosive. Now, scale that up into a national food industry. Scale that up to thousands of animals being raised, moved, slaughtered, and processed to feed a country. The math does not work. The safety framework does not exist. And there is no version of hippo farming that does not end in catastrophe. The congressmen who killed that bill were not being unimaginative. They were being correct. But here is where the hippo story becomes something much bigger, because it is not really about hippos. It is about a decision that was made 10,000 years ago on the other side of the world, and it shaped everything that ended up on your plate. Around 10,000 years ago, in a narrow strip of land called the Fertile Crescent, the region that is now Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran, a group of humans made a choice that would echo forward through every subsequent generation. They began farming deliberately. They selected a small number of local animals and started raising them in controlled conditions. Cows, pigs, sheep, goats, horses. All of those animals happened to pass enough of Diamond's 6 tests. Not perfectly in every case, but well enough to be workable. And over the following millennia, those animals spread. They traveled with human migration into Europe. They crossed with conquerors into Asia. They arrived in the Americas with colonial ships. They ended up in Australia with settlers. The same 14 animals, descended from those same Fertile Crescent populations, now feed the majority of the human world. And the animals that weren't in that original selection, they got left behind. The hippo has lived in Africa for millions of years. It was never found in the Fertile Crescent. The humans who built civilization's food system at the critical moment never encountered it. By the time Europeans arrived in sub-Saharan Africa and saw hippos for the first time, the food system was already built. Cows already existed. Pigs already existed. The infrastructure of global agriculture was already in motion. Why would any rational actor spend generations and enormous casualties attempting to domesticate a 4,000-pound semi-aquatic killing machine when a perfectly functional alternative already existed? They would not, and so they didn't. And the hippo stayed a river animal, and the world kept eating cows. Here is the thing that should sit with you after this video ends. You have eaten meat your entire life, and you have probably never once seriously questioned which animals ended up on your plate. It feels natural. It feels obvious. Of course you eat cows. Of course you eat pigs. Of course you eat chickens. But none of that is natural. None of it is obvious. It is the result of a single geographic accident that happened 10,000 years ago in one small corner of the world. The humans who happened to live near those specific animals domesticated them. Those animals happened to pass enough of the tests, and every human born since then has inherited that selection without ever being asked whether they agree. In parts of Central Africa, people do eat hippo. Where hippo bushmeat is available, people describe the meat as rich and fatty, somewhere between pork and beef. The hippo was never the problem. It was always potentially edible. The problem was that it was undomesticatable, and that was enough. So the next time you stand in front of that meat counter, remember this: you did not choose the animals you eat. History chose them. A handful of ancient humans in a specific place at a specific moment made a set of choices that locked in the global food system for 10 millennia. You inherited those choices. So did every person before you, and so will every person after. The hippo failed the test before you were born. The cow passed it before your civilization existed. And you have been eating the result your entire life, every single day, without once wondering how it was decided.